Welcome back in as our NCAA tournament coverage rolls along. Continuing to preview the regionals, I am joined by Big Ten Network analyst, Volleyball magazine writer, 15 different bylines, Emily Ehman, really grinding here in the month of April. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me. Excited to talk some volleyball with you.
Yeah, we're going to really dive in. I got to talk to Mick Haley earlier today about the entire bracket and some West Coast teams that he looked at, and obviously Texas. So with Emily, we're going to keep it Big Ten centric. 6 teams, all still in, Emily. It's the 14th straight year with 5 or more teams in the Sweet 16, trying to make it 3 straight with 3 or more in the Elite 8. I like our chances, the Big Ten possibly getting 3 or more in. But in that second round, who were 2 or 3 teams that you really thought played above and beyond expectations?
For me, the first one that stuck out was Penn State. We hadn't seen them play in 26 days. That was their first match back. Also, I don't know if this team necessarily had the competition, that high level of competition during the regular season. So watching them come out, yes, it was against NC A&T. I think we expected them to sweep them, but I think they came out with such dominance that really stuck out to me as, okay, this Penn State team is legit. People thought they might not have had the competition earlier in the season, but they came out so strong. Really liked watching them. And then I think the same kind of thing was with Wisconsin. We saw them twice, maybe 3 times in the last 2 months, going against Weber State. I don't think anyone didn't anticipate a sweep, but the same kind of thing, just a really dominant performance by them. And then lastly, I would say Ohio State going up against Mizzou, who was a really good team. And they did the same kind of thing, just came out really, really hot. A lot of players played really well. They had 3 different hitters in 3 different positions with 10 or more kills. So really spreading out the offense, which I think is going to help them a lot later down the line. So yeah, I would say Penn State, Ohio State, and Wisconsin really stuck out to me as doing a really good job in that round of 32.
Yeah, Ohio State is probably my pick for that question. A Missouri team with, that outside DeBerg, someone that has given Florida troubles this year, looked really good against the South Dakota team that a lot of people liked, and Ohio State shut them down. And Gabby Gonzalez was the X factor. And all season long, they've kind of, carried the wave of the freshmen with Rader and Londot, and you know what you're going to get on the outside from the superstar Emily Londot. But when Gabby Gonzalez played above and beyond in that second left side, and they didn't have to go to Janasia Moore, those were the matches that Coach Oldenburg's team were really melding, and Gonzalez only had 1 error. She only had 8 digs. I feel like we're so used to seeing 15, 16 digs. I know against Purdue, she picked everything up in the back row over the last few seasons. I like Ohio State. Penn State is the one that we'll start with here because, like you said, we didn't get to see the highly anticipated Wisconsin or the Nebraska series to end the season. I think we're going to learn everything we need to know about Penn State on Sunday against Texas. That's going to be the match where if Russ Rose can fire his team up enough that you're always going to get 1 Russ Rose match per postseason from Penn State. In my opinion, Annie Kate Fitzpatrick is probably like that X factor, if you want to call it that, right? She might make or break the team. But Caitlin Horde is someone that we have seen not used a lot in some matches that were like scratching our heads against Ohio State. And then they come out against Purdue and she's set 42 times. Where do you see Penn State and Texas in terms of expectations?
I think Penn State right now, we saw this last night. They're really good in the middle with Caitlin Horde, with Serena Gray. While they might not, be getting a ton of sets, every set that they do get, they're putting away. Both of them hit at least 750 last night, combining for 16 kills. So they're really good in the middle. And I think that that's a matchup with Texas that they really need to exploit, which means they really have to be keyed in on that pass. Obviously, Annie Kate Fitzpatrick on that outside has to do her job. And then Johnny Parker on the right side also has to kind of step up in that sense. But they've been playing pretty consistent volleyball, getting a lot of kills, especially contributing on that service line, getting a lot of really hard serves. And you have those Parker and Annie Kate Fitzpatrick back to back with that top spin. So if Texas can't handle a top spin serve well, I think they're going to get them out of system a lot, force their outsides. But kind of like I was saying, I think it comes down to that middle matchup for Penn State. And I think Penn State has the edge with Caitlin Horde and Serena Gray. They just work so well, back on the slide, in front, on the gap, wherever they are, they're always consistent and they find a way to put the ball down. So I think if Penn State can get that pass good, like they did last night, they're going to have a field day in the middle, and I think they could come out on top. But they also have to shut down Texas outside Logan Eggleston. She's one of the best hitters in the country. I think Penn State's blocks move. Penn State moves well enough to where they can, but I think they're going to have to, get used to that kind of quicker tempo and get out on Eggleston to shut her down. And if they can do that and get the middles going, I think they have a chance with how they played last night. They looked really, really good.
Yeah, that's a 5 o'clock Eastern time start on Sunday on ESPNU. But Emily, sign me up for Horde against Butler in the middle, a pair of absolute Goliaths at their position. And it'll be interesting to see if Rose moves around Kudrashova, who has that extra height over Parker, maybe matches her up with Eggleston here and there. You've got that one. Then you've got Nebraska, who I thought was one of the standouts on Thursday. Texas State was a trendy pick, right? They took down Baylor. Now they get Baylor. Nebraska-Baylor, a matchup that is probably a 2019 Final Four potential, right? Where a pair of teams that were so good and really didn't lose that much from 2019. I mean, Baylor said goodbye to Vandermark and Stafford. And Nebraska, they get in Kayla Caffey. You've gotten to watch a lot of Nebraska volleyball. Does it feel like this one could be lopsided?
I think Nebraska, like you said, is just doing so well. And it seems like they've improved every single match that they've had where, I don't necessarily know if they've had, as high of competition as some other teams, but definitely a lot higher competition than a team like Baylor. I think just playing in the Big Ten automatically gives these teams just an edge. You're constantly playing top 25, top 10 teams. And I think that's where Nebraska gets the edge. And then, you talk about the middles, Lauren Stivrins and Kayla Caffey, just a pair that is so hard to shut down. I don't see Baylor giving them too much of a fight. I mean, they are a really good team, but I think Nebraska has been battle tested enough to kind of, be used to that high level of competition, whereas Baylor just right now isn't.
Yeah, I hesitate to say it. This is a 2:30 start Eastern time on ESPNU. I have a feeling that both of these matches in this region could be, a little lopsided. Just my gut says Texas is a lot better than Penn State. Penn State's going to have to bring their all. And I think on the flip side, right, on that Big Ten versus Big 12 area, Nebraska should at home, and maybe even playing on their own Terraflex, take care of Baylor. Let's move on up past Ohio State, Florida, and talk first about Wisconsin and BYU. First, it's pretty cool that we get to go region by region, and almost every single one has a pair of Big Ten teams in it. So that's fun. Wisconsin, you were impressed with them. I watched a little bit of the Weber State match, but to be honest, I know what I'm getting out of Wisconsin. I'm excited that they're playing on a different day than everyone else, because I always feel like Wisconsin's just going to win. They're going to win. I'm going to get frustrated because of how good Dana Rettke is, but it's a ho-hum situation. You can dissect it for me. Who are a couple players that may not be the Retkes or the Robinsons for that team that really could push them past and into the Elite Eight?
Yeah, the first person that comes to mind is Haggerty. She's been such a key player for them for so many years, overcoming a lot during her career. She's always someone that this team can just absolutely lean on. She's a really good leader for this team, keeps everything light, and especially on the court, but even off the court, brings everyone together. I think she's someone that, yes, has a few standout matches here and there, but like you said, she's not a Rettke. She's not like Devin Robinson, but she's always so solid for that team. And when she plays well, the team does well. It's not necessarily a make or break situation, but she has to stay consistent through every single match for them to do well. She gets such a high number of balls, in the front row, but especially that back row too. So I think Haggerty is one to keep an eye on as just being a rock for that team. And if she's doing well, usually Wisconsin's winning.
Yeah, BYU really frustrated UCLA by just keeping so many balls in play. I think it's going to be up to Ashburn and Barnes in the back row just to continue that frustration that Wisconsin does so well. I mean, against Purdue, it felt like every time that Caitlin Newton tried to terminate, they were just getting it right back and forcing you to make that extra shot. BYU, Wisconsin, I'm just happy that it's on Saturday. I'm happy that we get to solo focus on that one because my gut tells me that Wisconsin might roll. But let's move over to what could be the match of the day, right? On Sunday, Ohio State and Florida. They're going to tip off or first serve at 7:30 Eastern time on ESPN2. Get the big network out there. We get the massive national TV audience. And I don't know. This one feels to me, Emily, like it is a pure 5-set toss up, a pair of athletes on both sides, so much size for Florida. How does Ohio State manage to kind of, offset that? They have Bukolich, but everyone else is a couple inches shorter than the Gators.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that Ohio State needs to be really good in their block and defense. And I think, Kylie Moore has done a phenomenal job of digging really tough, sharp shots, especially DeBerg. You saw her hitting some really hard cut shots during that match against Mizzou. And Kylie Moore was digging them really well, especially by the end. So I think if this block can be really patient and wait, going up strong hands, turning them in, and then on the defensive line, Kylie Moore and the rest of the gang back there just has to defend, has to get around the block. I think Kylie Moore is someone who hasn't necessarily been getting as many digs as she would have liked, but that's in part due to how good Ohio State's block has been this whole year. Coach Oldenburg was talking to me about it the other day and how just the block has improved so much that it makes our, defenders look not as good, but that's just because they're not getting as many balls because they're, getting touches or just getting shutdowns. So I think this block just has to be really, really good against Florida's offense in order for them to shut them down and kind of be successful.
Yeah, one thing that's interesting, and it can kind of segue into the Purdue side, was High Point's libero was the only libero in the nation that won Conference Player of the Year in Abby Bottomley. And something that Coach Shondell talked to me about was we have to just not hit it to the libero. So that's where I bring in Hannah Gruensfelder and Gabby Gonzalez, because Mary Wise, former Boilermaker, that she's going to be telling Thayer Hall and Lauren Dooley and Caesar on the outside, do not hit it to the libero. Kylie Moore is a freak because she is. I mean, she just gets everything. It is so frustrating to be facing Ohio State. So if Florida can play organized and can avoid the wide open court, but really Kylie Moore just covers so much, it's going to be up to Gruensfelder and up to Gabby Gonzalez. If they can keep balls alive, I think Ohio State has a slight advantage with the hitters if Riley Rader gets involved early. Because the two matches that Ohio State lost against Florida, Riley Rader was a bit of a non-factor early on in the match. And by the time they got her going, it was a little bit too late. We know what we're going to get from Londot, as I mentioned. And Bukolich, she's hot and cold. If you can get her on a hot match, Ohio State can absolutely see if we can finally get that Wisconsin OSU match that we've been wanting this season that, of course, got postponed. We've got two more matches to talk about. Oh, Emily, Purdue, they really like to do this to us, right? Boilermaker faithful. I mean, that first set felt fine, right? Up 10-5, all of a sudden a 10-2 run for the Panthers. Nothing that they were doing exceptionally well, right? Like, I want to ask you, because I was too into it, what did you see from High Point early that Purdue couldn't stop?
Part of me just thinks Purdue might not have been ready to go in the beginning of the match. I don't necessarily know if it was High Point doing anything specifically, well or spectacular. I think Purdue just kind of really slowly got into that match. And as you saw, when the play went on, they started picking it up and up and up. And then, you see them down 24-19. They're like, all right, we got to go. And we got to really turn it on. We can't just mess around with this team. Yes, it's High Point, but that's a really good team. They were undefeated at the time. They don't want to lose the game. They want to keep going, and to beat a team like Purdue, they're going to play their best. And so I think Purdue just wasn't necessarily ready, which was something, Coach Shondell and a few other coaches were talking about. We don't know how our players are going to be. They haven't played, in a little while. And so just hopping on to this match court where they haven't really been on for more than a half hour during their time there, I think it was just Purdue not really being ready to go. And then we saw them flip that switch insanely quick.
Yeah, and that's a good point about the first round buys for a lot of these teams. We did see Wisconsin kind of, find their ground a little bit early in that match. Same with Minnesota against Georgia Tech. But Oregon is not going to be High Point size-wise, right? You've got 6'5" in the middle with Abby Hansen. You've got 6'4" in the middle with Carson Bacon. Taylor Trammell and J.L. Johnson, both snubbed from the All Big Ten Awards. I got to mention that. I don't know how neither of the Purdue middles were named, and Trammell did get the All-Region honorable mention. I think if Haley Bush can find a way to get Grace Cleveland involved a little bit earlier, right? We didn't see Grace do anything until that 3-point run from 24-23, 24 all, 25-24, all Grace Cleveland. She's going to have to play a little bit taller than she is at 6'3". She can get up there and hit with anyone. Same kind of thing, right? Nunneveller is a libero playing as an outside. So they basically have two liberos on the court at all times. If you can avoid to hit it at Nunneveller and force Georgia Murphy to play above her potential, I think, or maybe right at her potential, but above what she has played in the last few years as a sophomore, that might be the X factor. Where do you see this match being decided in?
Yeah, I think, to me, it comes down to Caitlin Newton and Grace Cleveland. I think, of course, we can talk about the block up front with JL Johnson and Taylor Trammell. I think they're consistently getting blocked, so I'm not necessarily worried about them getting those. But I think Caitlin Newton and Grace Cleveland have been very, up and down over the last few weeks, I'll say. Caitlin Newton had an outstanding performance in that match against High Point. But I think before then, we hadn't seen her kind of come alive yet, I guess. She seemed just not going up, I guess, in the last few matches, but she really came alive and absolutely dominated for this team. And I think she needs to have another match like that. And then at the same time, I think Grace Cleveland also needs to have, another match like she did. She had 10 kills in that match against High Point, but getting her more involved was something that Dave Shondell really wanted to do. And I think they want to get her even more involved, especially from the back row. And so getting her the ball more and having her be able to put it down is going to be key. And then, avoiding those two really good defenders in the backcourt is going to be big. So I'm sure they're working on that a ton in practice, whether that's, putting some shots in or just having to avoid those two players. But I think when Caitlin Newton and Grace Cleveland are both doing really well at the top of their game, this team is so hard to stop.
They are. And, of course, with Kentucky sitting there on the other side of that region, would be the third season in a row that Purdue and Kentucky may meet. Of course, the Skinner and Shondell connection, both went to Ball State. All three of them, in fact, John and Dave, went to the same school as Craig Skinner, and all from Muncie, Indiana. But you mentioned that Caitlin Newton served out of control on Thursday. It was one of her best serving matches of the season. It was her best match since the Penn State. And you know what? I don't know what it is about star outsides for Purdue. Sheridan Atkinson really turned it on when the lights were the brightest. And I think Caitlin Newton on national TV, 8:30 p.m., prime time, maybe one other match going on at the time with Ohio State and Florida, but there was so much mania, right? You can hear it on the television, how much, you hear the other announcers, the PA announcers, you hear the other whistles going. I can only imagine how tough it is to focus when there are all these whistles going off and you're like, was that an our cart? Wait, what's going on? So that's
as a viewer, I was getting confused. I was like, wait, they blew the whistle. Like that was a call. And I guess they don't notice it like that, but they're also used to playing like this. It's like a glorified club tournament. They're used to playing in gyms with 100+ courts in high school, so they can do it now.
Yeah, it has been a few years for a couple of them. Maybe that's why some of the freshmen have been standouts in the first two rounds. Obviously, someone like Brooke Nunneveller could put up 35 kills, right? She could just do it against the skyscrapers that are Washington. So, it's a toss-up for me. I'm not going to go ahead and make a pick in this one, but it feels like it's going to go 5. That's just what my gut says. Purdue has only made it to 2 Elite Eights under the 18 years of Coach Shondell, hasn't done it in 8 years. So that's just that little bit of a hump. Oregon, they upset Minnesota a few years ago. Remember Samantha Seliger-Swenson? They thought maybe they'd get to host the NCAA Final Four, but that crazy 31-29 second set that, what was her name? Van Wield, right? Was that the Oregon standout? Lindsay Vanderwide, was that her name? The superstar for Oregon. She was phenomenal.
Oregon's always good. Yeah. They're always consistently good. They might not be like, a Nebraska or a Minnesota, Wisconsin, but like they're always really good. And like they're that team that could easily sneakily beat a team. So I think, Purdue's going to have to play super well to get this one out. But I definitely think as long as they're playing well, they can do it.
And so then you go up to the top right, our final Big Ten team, a team that, all intents and purposes probably has the easiest road to the Final Four from a unbiased, bias, however you want to call it, right? Minnesota is going to take on Pittsburgh on Sunday. The first game, 1:00 Eastern time on ESPN3. Kayla Lund is really good. They dominated Danny Drews defensively. This is no easy task. In fact, Minnesota's regional semifinal may be easier than the regional final, as they have Louisville and Washington, who have not played too well in the last couple of weeks on the other side of the bracket.
Yeah, I think, Minnesota, we saw this last year too when Louisville upset Texas to play Minnesota. They had an easier round last year too. And this team is really good, so I don't want to discredit them and, how well they're playing, because they did do pretty well against Georgia Tech. I think they could fine tune a little bit better a few things. But yeah, I mean, Pitt is also a sneaky team. You talked about Kayla Lund, Chinaza Nde. There's a few players on this team that are really, really good, and they're going to have to control in order to come out on top. CeCe McGraw, the libero, isn't playing for them. They have a new libero, and so, kind of adjusting back there. I think their passing rotations looked a little shaky, I guess, during that match against Georgia Tech. But as long as they can fine tune a few things and, get people kind of going, I feel like that match against Georgia Tech, they just played pretty average for the most part. Like, it wasn't Minnesota volleyball. They got the sweep, so like that's great. Obviously, it looked like they were super dominant, but those sets are really, really close. And I think if they're going to play like that as the tournament goes on, you're facing teams like Pitt, you could face a Louisville or a Washington. If they're going to play, here or here, they're not going to be successful. Like, they really need to be, keeping their level of play going up. And I think a team like Pitt could be sneaky and take a set off them if Minnesota's not ready.
Yeah, you mentioned, they kind of just did what it took to beat Georgia Tech. That's the way it felt. And it's obviously Rachel Kilkelly's, job to keep that back line. And against Purdue, when CeCe McGraw was aced 8 times, Wennis came in, Kilkelly took the libero jersey in the 4th set. They won the 4th, they won the 5th. And that kind of feels like it was a momentum shifter early in the year. I think this is one of Hugh McCutcheon's best coaching jobs, right? You've got a freshman who is temperamental on the left side in Taylor Landfair. You've got a freshman who has the potential to be an Olympian, right, in the next couple of years in Melanie Schaffmaster if her trajectory continues to rise. But then you've got to kind of handle a few characters, right, with Rollins and with Pittman. And then you had Katie Myers earlier in the year that everyone was really, including myself, really high on. I thought the addition of Katie Myers, the former All-American from Maryland, was going to be massive. Nope. Hugh McCutcheon said, you didn't cut it. It was that Purdue weekend too. Katie Myers got benched for Ellie Huseman. And from then on, it was Huseman's middle. So I think Minnesota, if they can figure themselves out throughout this match, like you mentioned, if they kind of drop a set even early, it might not hurt them to just have a bit of a wake-up call, because they did kind of cruise through the back half of the season. But Pittsburgh has not lost in the spring. So you give them an inch, they may take a foot, and they may wake up Minnesota a little too late for the sleeping Samity to arise, because there have been points, and I'm sure you watched a lot of Big Ten and you've covered Minnesota. There's points where Samity kind of goes away for a little bit. So that's got to be the one concern for Gophi Nation.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think Stephanie Samity needs to get back to how she was playing at the beginning of the spring season. I think she's obviously an incredible player. I think she should be in contention for National Player of the Year. But I want to see her get back to how she was playing at the beginning of the spring season, when she was having like 25 plus kill nights.
When
I
she
know it was
smoked Purdue, yeah.
When she just smoked everyone. Like, she goes up there to hit a ball and like you don't even see it hit the ground. She's hitting it so hard. And not only that, but like she's hitting it in the back row super hard. She's getting digs that are crazy that like only liberos are making. Like, she just looks good all over the court. And she had a lot of kills the other night. She ended up with 13, which is great. But I want to see her like 20 plus kills, just absolutely hammering the ball. I think that she needs to just have a little more involvement for them. And I think especially in the back row is something that they can utilize a lot more on that D ball, just because it's hard to defend. You could run someone, whoever, Pittman on a slide or something, have her on a D ball. Like, you got 2 offensive threats coming on that back pin over there. Huge advantage, Minnesota.
Yeah, Schaffmaster just hasn't set the middles like we've seen Pittman set in her last few years. Taylor Morgan and Reagan Pittman were absolute units in the middle. You were scared every single ball, every single time the dig was made that maybe a middle was going to be. But this year, it's really been a lot more of the outsides and the right side oriented, and something you might expect with a freshman. But I think the one thing that's really odd about this year is 14 of the 16 teams have only played 1 match. So usually by the time you reach that second weekend, everyone's kind of loose, but you're going to have to really rev up and get to that 25, 30 kill performances to make it into the deepness of this tournament. But I'll tell you what, in a perfect world, we can really see some of these Big Ten freshmen shine, because in the top left, you've got Robinson and Demps, you've got Londot and Rader. Bottom left, you've got Annie Kate Fitzpatrick, and then I'm blanking on Nebraska's outside freshman.
Me too.
Oh man, I'm gonna get some heat from Husker Nation for this one.
I'm also
sure
gonna get some heat from Husker Nation.
Okay, well, lots of fantastic freshmen. Then you've got the right side. I think Taylor Landfair is going to be a name that Big Ten fans are going to either love or hate over the next few years because of how dominant that she could be. And then in the bottom right, Taylor Trammell. Can she, elevate and be hungry like she was in that stretch against Penn State and against Rutgers and against Ohio State, where she was blocking 8-9 balls per match? There was a set early in the, I want to say the first set of the Illinois match, the first one, where she had 7 blocks in the first set. And I was going absolutely bonkers about that one. So I don't know. She only had like 7 blocks in the match against High Point. So that's nothing, right? She was like second in Big Ten history. In Purdue history in single block assists in an NCAA tournament. But we're going to have to keep an eye, because I'm curious how these freshmen handle the moment. You mentioned a glorified AAU tournament. Someone needs to be a superstar in those tournaments. That's how we get 5 stars. That's how we get Under Armour All-Americans. So now we just take that step, take away the UA, and you play your way into an All-American here in this upcoming next 2 days, right? Sunday and Monday. That's when you go from all region to All-American. I'm very excited for the Big Ten to see if they could solidify themselves as the premier conference, because they've got 6, so the numbers are on their side. But right now there's an opportunity for a couple, things to go the Big 12's way. And if Baylor and Texas take that bottom left, they have their bragging rights for the next week or so.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a tough road for some of these teams. And then, for other ones, we expect them to show out and be who they are. But yeah, you look at Penn State and Texas and Ohio State and Florida, 2 matches that are going to be really crucial, and getting the Big Ten to keep going. And those matches really could go either way. We talked about a few 5-setters, potentially, Purdue and Oregon as well. It'll be a fun time. I'm trying to think about this. If you're Wisconsin, do you like the fact that you're playing on Saturday from a prep standpoint?
Yes, because then you get Sunday off. Right?
I think so too.
You have to like it, because Ohio State and Florida have to play at night, right? They've 7:30. That's the only thing where, like, how do you not move the Ohio State Florida match to also on Saturday? That kind of confused me with that decision.
And then you have a back-to-back Sweet 16 Elite 8 matchup when there's multiple days in between. That didn't make sense to me regardless. But yeah, I think if you're Wisconsin, you're freaking pumped right now.
Yeah, you have to be happy, but you also have to realize BYU is a team that they're not like coming out of nowhere, right? They know what it feels like to play in regional matches. They've made it to Elite Eights year after year. So I'm excited for it. Tell us, what kind of coverage we can expect from you, whether it be from remote or from Omaha.
Yeah, so I'll be in Omaha from the Elite 8 on. Right now, kind of what I'm doing is a lot from my bedroom. I put up a little backdrop here. I'm doing a lot on B1G Volleyball, Instagram and Twitter. So game recaps, some previews, Emily's Aces, where I give 1 or 2 players that did really well that match. But yeah, a lot of digital content coming out for Big Ten Network right now surrounding the volleyball tournament, which is something that we haven't really done before. So really excited to be doing that. And then, yeah, I head to Omaha on Saturday.
Fantastic. So we're going to keep staying tuned to all of your updates, everything. Nebraska, I didn't forget about you. Akani, the Hawaiian in the back row. That's the one to look out for, the freshman. Just kept escaping us. But she only had, a handful of digs the last few matches. So those are the players that someone like Yassiana Presley may be like, okay, we're going to attack her. So it might be up to Akana to keep that, that mojo going, get the ball into the hands of Hames as much as possible, as quick as possible. Same for Purdue, right? Jenna Otek kind of struggled earlier in that first set against High Point. She had 2 digs through the first set. They were picking on her. Then she stepped it up. Her and Hornung were big. There are a lot of X factors, but it all comes down to serving. That Penn State Texas one could be the serving deciding match of this tournament. But if you ask any coach what the keys to the game are, it's always going to be the serve pass game.
Serve and pass.
Every single day of the week, I'm sure volleyball broadcasters have stopped asking that question like I have. But Emily, thank you so much for joining me. We are very excited for all the Big Ten action this weekend.
Thank you for having me. Excited to watch.
She's Emily Ehman. I'm Daniel Gillman. Thank you so much. Continue to stay tuned as this tournament rolls along for more coverage. And if you haven't checked out my interview with Mick Haley, the 4-time national champion head coach, it was a blast. He brings so much passion to it, and he really is an encyclopedia of volleyball knowledge.